Welcome to this module within the course Introduction to Public Service. This module is about customer service. I'm Bonnie McEwen with the State Library. I'm the consultant for the Northwest District Office. My home base is Sioux City. In this module, we'll look at some definitions of customer service, along with tips for providing customer service training with your staff. We'll talk about how kindness and confidence lead staff to delivering good customer service. We'll talk about what's meant by a customer service statement. And we'll look at the importance of upholding diversity and inclusion when interacting with library patrons and each other. There are so many definitions of customer service. Many of them come from the business sector. Because there are so many definitions out there, you'll find many commonalities. You'll find so many times phrases like good products, enjoyable experiences, repeat customers. Here's one definition I like from Help Scout. Customer service is the act of providing timely, empathetic help that keeps the customer's needs at the forefront of every interaction. It gives customers a complete experience that aligns with an organization's purpose. Now, the yellow highlighting on the slide is mine. I've noted the phrase, a complete experience. That word experience is very commonly found in customer service definitions. In fact, there's a trend in business and in libraries too, where workers now have job titles like an experience manager. Here's another definition. I like this one too. Because of the lines I've highlighted here, customer service is the support you offer your customers before and after interactions, giving them an easy, enjoyable experience. What might that mean in library land before the encounter? Well, it could mean making sure that your library website is current and easy to navigate. It could mean making sure that your digital collection is front and center on your website so that people can use your online products even if they can't actually come into the library. That last phrase on the slide, supporting customers anytime on the channel of their choice. I love that phrase. Let's talk more about that. You know, most of us think of customer service as a face-to-face interaction. We think of it that way first, and it certainly is that. But there are also so many other ways to positively impact people's experience. Phone conversations are so important, and they're oftentimes harder because you can't read a patron's body language. When answering the phone, be sure to identify yourself and the library as well, and put a smile in your voice. Answering phones is a big deal for me. And you can actually hear a smile on the phone. For instance, you could hear someone answer the phone like this: Blue Sky Public Library. But what if patrons heard someone answer the phone like this? Good morning, Blue Sky Public Library. This is Bonnie. How can I help? If you have automated messaging system, be sure to change up those greetings on occasion with new greetings, maybe with seasonal greetings. Emailing and texting is also important and now so commonplace. Emails and texts are known for their brevity, but they also have to be written for clarity. Text especially can be difficult to interpret. It's crazy with abbreviations and often with emojis and bitmojis and GIFs, all of which are fun to use personally when we're being informal, but they're not always so great in the workplace. So if you and your patrons are texting each other, be sure to clarify their question and be clear with your answer. It saves time. Make sure your responses are well written and fully written in complete sentences. And do keep your eyes on your own website. It's so important as a communication channel for your library website to be up to date. Well, why is it so important for public libraries to provide great customer service? After all, libraries are not in the private sector. They're not in business trying to make a profit. Well, that is true, but providing good to great customer service in libraries is important because city libraries are city services funded by city tax dollars. When city libraries are well managed, staffed with caring and empathetic people, then library service reflects positively on city government. And those libraries tend to engender greater taxpayer support. Patrons respond to good service by returning time and again. They will become library boosters. They are likely to offer their services as volunteers. They maybe will say yes to serving on the library board. People do respond to good service and to a friendly atmosphere with friendly faces behind those public service desks. And people are very likely then to speak up when library services are challenged by budget cuts or sometimes by book challenges. So customer service, you know it when you see it, you know it when you don't. One significant reason for me that the Fairway grocery store is so nice to shop at is that all the checkouts are staffed and the staff are instructed to roll the grocery carts right out to your car. On the flip side, I'm convinced that many people feel that there are way too many self-check aisles in stores now and not nearly enough grocery clerks actually checking out. When you have great customer service in your library, your patrons will want to keep coming back. It's also good to remember that people do have other options for their reading enjoyment. If they have the wherewithal, they can shop online for their books. People have become accustomed at Googling their way to answers to what we used to call reference questions. And actually, people have many options when it comes to actually using other libraries other than their hometown place. People have a lot of libraries to choose from in Iowa. There have been plenty of studies showing how customers share their bad service stories much more frequently than they share their happy service stories. And these days, social media makes it so quick and easy to rail about a bad experience. So back to the idea of doing customer service training with your staff. When you're doing this as a training topic, and I hope you do, maybe posing this very question to your staff would be a good icebreaker. Ask your staff what they see as good customer service and what they dislike, what they see as not such great customer service. It's a nice way to begin a discussion and a class on this topic. So my two hallmarks of good to great customer service focus on kindness and confidence. I love this quote from Maya Angelou. It could be one of her most famous lines. People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So if you can do this when you're working and pretty consistently, applying simple kindnesses, simple gestures to your interactions with people, you will become an ace at customer service. There's another component that's needed also, and that's confidence, which comes from competence and training. I have thoughts about both of these. Kindness is many things, like simple courtesies, welcoming, friendly faces, clean, appealing, inviting spaces, and greetings. Simple good mornings, good evenings. Thanks for coming in today. I try to end most of my phone conversations with libraries. I try to end with the line, "I'm so glad you called. Good to talk with you today." When you find phrases like that you're comfortable with and they become just a habit, then customer service interactions are also eased and enjoyable. What do customers really want? They want someone to acknowledge their presence. They want a greeting. They want to be listened to and respected. And they also want competent staff who are able to help them with their questions. Remember that people are choosing to visit your library. They have service expectations of you just as they have expectations when they are in a store or in a restaurant. It's up to you and the library staff to meet or exceed those expectations. Doing that will build up community support. So we've looked at some things that kindness. We can now take a look at my second hallmark of customer service, which is confidence. That comes with training and practice. And my thoughts about building confidence are about training and practice, notably with technical skills, because when staff are competent in helping people with techie issues, it greatly impacts and improves customer service. Here's some examples. Consider this. It's my theory that competence leads to confidence, which leads to improved customer experience. Look at this list of equipment, products, and spaces. Now, some of you may have all of these in your library. Some may have a few. But think about customer service in this way. If patrons wanted to use any of these products, these spaces like the library's meeting room or your makerspace room, or if they wanted to use any equipment that the library has, who is available to provide help if help is needed? Who can help patrons use the Libby app when they're using bridges? Who can ensure that patrons can connect their own personal laptops to the library's wireless network? Who can help people then connect their personal laptop to the TV in the library's meeting room? And what does that do to a person's opinion of the library if that help just isn't there? Here's what I mean about policy understanding. Last year, I watched a really good webinar on customer service, and the speaker urged frontline staff to not throw their managers or their boards under the bus when it comes to blaming them for bad policies. That's not good form. You don't want to say out loud to your patrons, "I know this is a horrible policy, but I have to follow it." Please don't reveal that out loud. Let me suggest about the list you see here. Let me suggest that you develop a similar list of your library's equipment and products and spaces, like your meeting room, your makerspace. Okay, flip that list into a chart that might have 3 columns where you ask your staff to indicate just how comfortable, how confident do they feel if they were to have to help a patron with any of these things on your list, right? So you could have a column that says, "I can do that with confidence," You could have a middle column that says, well, I probably can do that, but I would benefit from a little more training. You might have a third column that says, oh, there is no way that I could help a patron with that. It's an interesting exercise to do with your staff. You can use that in staff training. I'm coming back again to that idea of doing customer service as a staff training topic, and you could use a chart like this when you're doing staff evaluations. Remember, too, that you are each other's internal customers. Presuming you have a staff other than yourself, if your own library has the benefit of one or two or more staff people, that you can talk with, your own library environment behind the scenes should be the safest place of all, the safest place to ask people, to ask your coworkers what you might feel are dumb questions. And here's something that I think would be a very useful thing to do. Take that chart that I just talked about, the chart of equipment and products and spaces in your library. Take a chart like that to a county directors meeting or to a county-wide staff training day. Compare and contrast with each other outside of your own library amongst your colleagues in your county. Compare and contrast what products and equipment that you all have in common, and then share with each other your tips or maybe some instructions that will help your staff use the equipment or product better, come to understand the product better, and then in turn they go back to their library and they can better assist patrons with using those same products. Just a few more customer service considerations. And one of them is signage. How easy is it to find something in the library? Have you looked at your signage lately to look at how current and up to date it is? Are you using sign design software so that your signage looks professionally produced? I hope so. Shelf talkers add an element of surprise for patrons. If you're not familiar with that term, think of shelf talkers as bookmarks. Bookmarks that you would scatter around your collection, scattered throughout the shelves, kind of like a simple flyers, really. Bookmarks that point people from your physical book collection to your online collection. So here's an example. Imagine that someone is browsing your shelves for recipe books, for new meal ideas, and they see a shelf talker in the section of your recipe books, reminding them to also look at bridges. Your flyer, your shelf talker might say something like, did you know that the Bridges collection includes the magazine Cooking Light Soups and Stews? The Bridges collection includes a magazine titled Cooking Light 20-Minute Meals. Shelf talkers are a fun thing to try with your staff. Another good aspect of customer service training when you bring forward that topic for a staff training day. You could collaborate on ideas for shelf talkers. It's a surprising customer service encounter. And finally, feedback. You know, so many businesses do this, restaurants especially, include on the receipt a link to provide feedback. Now, you know, libraries don't do service evaluations that frequently, and that's okay. But pick your spots, maybe at the end of a summer reading program, maybe at the end of a big deal adult program. You could have a quick and easy feedback, a survey, an opinion poll that you ask people to fill out, and the answers then will help improve upon the customer experience next time. Let's turn our attention now to what's meant by a customer service statement. It's a written philosophy pointing to the kind of service that the library aims to provide. Nearly every library has a mission statement. One reason for that might be that having a mission statement is a public library standard. That's one reason. I don't as often come across libraries that have written values, including customer service as a value. It really does take you a bit further than a mission statement, in that a customer service statement really speaks to how the library intends to fulfill its mission as outlined in its mission statement. How do you intend to fulfill that mission? It is a philosophy of service, as the slide suggests. It's an expectation of how library staff should strive to treat patrons and each other. Having a customer service statement is a great thing to add to your library's website. It's also a pretty great thing to include in orientations for new staff and in refresher training for all staff. If you don't have one among your policy documents, think about developing one. Here's a very good example of a customer service statement. This comes from West Des Moines Public Library. And given what we've talked about in the last few minutes, this customer service statement really hits all the notes that we've talked about. There's a quote there that says, "We go out of our way to be welcoming, inclusive, accessible." Another quote says, "We treat everyone and each other as valued individuals." A very nice example for you to spring off of and brainstorm off of if you decide to include this in your library's policies. Well, we'll wind up with a discussion about diversity and inclusion. These are also important parts of providing thoughtful, mindful, deliberate customer service. This quote on the slide, "A person's right to use a library should not be denied or abridged because of origin, age, background, or views." This quote comes from the Library Bill of Rights, which has been and continues to be a foundational document for public libraries nationwide. Library staff should take care to be welcoming, courteous, helpful to patrons of all ages, regardless of race, regardless of appearance or age. When it comes to age, we often find it easy, I think, to get impatient with teens. The teens can come barreling into the library in those after school hours with noise and energy. There's also the circumstances of latchkey children who are dropped off at the library for long periods of time, which leads to the circumstance of unattentive parents. There are the issues of the homeless population, the mentally ill population. You may certainly have visitors who are dealing with very challenging economic circumstances. Any statement, any customer service statement that includes your value of diversity and inclusion will help you and your staff not to overreact to those circumstances. It will help you to circle back to those notions of kindness, which will go a long way. This definition of inclusion comes from the American Library Association. It's an environment in which all individuals are treated fairly and respectfully, in which individuals are valued for their skills, experiences, and perspective. So examples of inclusion might be these things. Are you ever able to schedule children's programs at various times throughout the week or throughout a month? Maybe even to throw in some nighttime children's programming, nighttime story times, pajama story times in the warm weather months, I suspect, so that it is helpful and open and inclusive of those households in which both parents work. Maybe your library is already checking out wireless hotspots for people who are without internet access at home. Inclusion also means steering clear of judgments about what teens are checking out and upholding teens' privacy in the same way you protect adults' privacy. And it might mean treating everyone equally so that all patrons have the same shot at getting a hold of the newest bestsellers without giving special preferential treatment first to staff or to family or even to board members. All of those ideas can be a part of what we mean by inclusion. So here is one more idea for a customer service training topic at your library. This is a mnemonic for customer service whereby you would ask your staff, either use this as an individual handout or as a group exercise, ask your staff to come up with a word, an adjective, an adverb, whatever, to come up with a word connected to each letter in the words customer service. That can be another nice icebreaker to begin the topic of customer service training. It could also be a very nice concluding activity for customer service training at your library. And one more suggestion before we finish. Here are a few books on the topic of customer service and holding quality, even if difficult, conversations. These are not library-specific books, but they are newish titles that I know would be good purchases for your own collections if you don't already own these. And maybe to include these books in your staff training in some fashion. I've read 2 out of 3, so I can recommend Unreasonable Hospitality, The Remarkable Power of Giving People More Than They Expect. That is a really good book on customer service from the business sector. In the middle, you see Crucial Conversations, Tools for Talking When Stakes Are High, another very good book now out in its 3rd edition. Now, I have not read Digital Customer Service, but I love the title and I love the idea described in the subtitle, Transforming Customer Experience for an Online World. All of these books would make good purchases for your own library collection. Well, this concludes the module on customer service. Thanks so much for watching.